So Nick Saban has been the head coach at Alabama now a decade, as Kevin Scarbinsky here says it, the decade of dominance. And of course, what better way to put together Nick Saban, an all-Saban team, and we're going to break this up into offense and defense. We'll start with the offense today. Kevin Scarbinsky, Matt Scalici here to do so. And we're going to pick the main 4 positions in offense. We'll do quarterback, we'll do running back, wide receiver, and offensive lineman. And I'm going to go back and forth here, start with Kevin, and we'll go with the quarterback position. If you're picking the best quarterback that Nick Saban has had at Alabama in the last 10 years, who are you going with?
Well, I'm not necessarily picking the best. I'm picking the best available for my team.
Okay, fair enough. Best available.
Draft style.
You know me, I'm a contrarian. So with the first pick in the AL.com All-Saban draft, I'm going to take Jake Coker. Because not only can he throw for 300 yards in a playoff game, he also can lower his shoulder and run over a defender if need be.
I honestly didn't know you were going to go with that pick. I didn't think he'd be available to me here, but I'm going to go with A.J. McCarron. And I think that's kind of the obvious one to me, is just looking at his record at Alabama, the fact that he was the guy that won 2 national championships for them, and more so I think than other Alabama quarterbacks that certainly were serviceable, got the job done. A.J. McCarron, I think, made plays to win those championship games and was a very integral part of the offense in a way that most other Alabama quarterbacks weren't until maybe last year.
And everyone forgets, even in the shutout of LSU, everybody focuses on the defense. He was 23 for 34 for 234 yards. And on top of all that, of all of Nick Saban's Alabama players, none of them more closely resembled Saban in demeanor than A.J. McCarron. You didn't always like him, but you always had to respect him.
That is so true. And speaking of A.J. McCarron, we saw him at Talladega over the weekend. He's a big NASCAR fan. And ironically, Jake Coker and A.J. McCarron there both grew up together. So it's fitting. We'll go to the running back position. We'll start with you, Matt. Who are you picking up at running back?
A lot of good options here. You could make an argument for a lot of different guys to be your all-Saban running back. I'm going to go with Derrick Henry. I think he's the best example of the complete package, physically dominant, put up incredible numbers for Alabama. There were long stretches of his career where he was the offense at Alabama. You could load the whole game on his back and he could carry it. So that would be my guy if I had to go with one.
Yeah, that's a pretty good choice. Hard to argue with that. Now, let me preface my choice by saying that I did include Mark Ingram on my Heisman ballot in 2009. He was my second choice.
Yeah.
I had Rolando McClain first.
Yep.
Okay,
so I wasn't trying to keep Mark Ingram from winning the Heisman, although I got very nervous.
Does this ever get brought up to you, Kevin?
Once or twice,
Yeah.
an hour, ever since.
An hour.
I was at an Alabama basketball game when they announced it, and when that man said in the closest vote in Heisman history, I thought to myself, I said a silent prayer, Dear Lord, please do not let him lose by 1 point. Because that was the difference between him being second and first on my ballot. So I was glad that he won that. But I'm not going to go with Mark Ingram, having said all that. I'm going to go with Trent Richardson. This is my biggest beef with our All-Saban team. And again, you can't lose with either one. And Ingram was so good, especially in 2009. But Ingram, if you remember, I mean, Richardson also had 100 yards rushing against Texas in that national championship game as a true freshman. And he was the offense in 2011 until A.J. really came of age in the national championship game. So not including NFL, just strictly what they did at Alabama, I'll take Trent Richardson.
And let's face it, you really can't go wrong at that position. He's had so much talent, so much depth there at running back. We'll move on to receiver. We'll start with you, Kevin. Who are you going with at wide receiver?
Yeah, there are 2 all-time greats in particular here. You can't go wrong either way. But I was such a champion for Amari Cooper early on. I started promoting him for Heisman early in that season. He was so good and made every catch in every big situation. Could beat you short, could beat you deep, across the middle. He could make every catch. So I'm going to go with Amari Cooper.
Well, I'm never going to complain about having to settle for Julio Jones. I think probably the most physically dominant player at maybe any position that we've seen at Alabama when he was healthy. And unfortunately for us that watch Alabama football and cover it, he wasn't healthy for long stretches of his Alabama career. Still did incredible things. I think there are folks in Knoxville that still have nightmares about Julio Jones. He seemed to pick on them a little bit more than others. But obviously it's turned out to be an all-pro at the NFL level. Might end up being one of the NFL Hall of Famers at this position. So I'll definitely be okay with having to pick Julio Jones here.
Yeah, he also set the recruiting tone for Alabama.
Definitely, yeah.
He was the bell cow of that 2008 recruiting class, which was the foundation of everything that came after. So he obviously he will go down as one of the greatest players in Alabama history.
Both great picks there, and we'll wrap this thing up. We'll go to the offensive line, and of course, Matt, you get this pick. Who are you going with on the line?
So if I've got to pick an offensive lineman that I'm going to build the rest of the line around, to me, I want more than just the physical dominance. I want leadership and versatility, and to me, Barrett Jones is kind of the embodiment of that for Alabama. They've had other guys that have moved around on the line and played different spots, but Barrett Jones was really the kind of prototype for Nick Saban for that. Played every single position on the offensive line at some point, but was also just a very great vocal leader for that team. Big part of that 2012 offensive line that was just so dominant, and obviously personality-wise was a big part of that team as well. We saw him kind of getting in A.J. McCarron's face, one of kind of the most memorable moments of the Nick Saban era. So Barrett Jones for me is, I arguably, if we weren't breaking this up by position, he might be my #1 overall pick for this draft.
Wow. When I say with Barrett Jones, he's obviously a vocal leader. You still see him out in the community. He's still very attached to the program.
Absolutely.
I see him all the time out and about, and I do have to bring up the fact that I actually played Scrabble with him once, because you know he's like a Scrabble champ, right?
That doesn't surprise me.
But I
Who
think
won?
well, okay, so he won, but at the end, when he won, he put Roll Tide on the board, and he actually spelled it wrong.
Whoa.
I did bring that up to him the other day.
Tell me he didn't spell it R-O-L-E.
I'm actually trying to. He flipped the words around. It was just kind of one of those things, but it was cool. But yes, he's a Scrabble champ.
The great thing about Barrett is, I mean, he could be the captain of the All-Saban team.
Absolutely.
I think he almost obviously would be.
Yeah.
And you could play him at center, you could play him at guard, you could play him at tackle, and he was outstanding at every position. So that's a great pick. It's hard to choose someone other than him first. But you do anchor your offensive line with your center, and Barrett was a great one. But I'm going to go with another great one, Ryan Kelly.
Yeah.
Who and maybe this has influenced a little bit because he was a first-round draft pick as a center. That doesn't happen every day, and he's had a productive career in the NFL. But he was the anchor of that offensive line his last several years at Alabama. He kind of took over the mantle from Barrett, and just again a great leader as well as a great player.
He was another guy that I think surprised you that, sort of even at a relatively younger age, you would go talk to him in the locker room after an SEC championship, after a bowl game. He was a very forceful personality. He took up for his teammates. He seemed like he was definitely, like you said, an anchor in more than just physical ways for that team.
He was a go-to guy in the locker room on Monday interview days because he would always give you a really thoughtful answer to whatever question you asked. He wasn't always the king of the one-liner, although he did have a dry sense of humor.
He did,
But he always gave you some good material because he really thought out the questions. And again, just another example of him being a leader.
All right, the picks are in. The picks right here from Kevin Scarbinsky, Matt Scalici. Of course, if you want to see all the picks for the full roster of the All-Saban team, you can find those on AL.com, and we'll also be breaking down the defense for you very soon.